What if the very thing holding you back from your next level is something you're still gripping onto? In today's episode, we're diving into the art of surrender because you can't rise while you're clinging on to what no longer serves you, whether it's an outdated identity, a draining relationship, or a belief that's quietly running the show. This conversation is an invitation to let go so that you can step into alignment, your creativity, and your purpose. I'm joined by Shani Pride, a powerful guide for creatives and change makers, a writer, director. She's in the film industry, and she's here for the ones that want to use storytelling and media, not just to be seen, but to amplify their truth. And she really helps purpose driven people rewrite their narratives, own their message, and become who they were always meant to be. And in this episode, we are talking about what it means to trust the process, redefine who you are, and create from a place of alignment and not urgency. So, if you're feeling stuck or if you're feeling like you're hovering at the edge of your next chapter, this one is for you. When you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise. Well, first and foremost, Shani, thanks so much for joining me here on the podcast. I'm so excited for us to dive into conversation. As I was sharing with you before, we're coming from like similar worlds and different worlds at the same time. And so I'm just really excited to be in conversation with a creative such as yourself and someone who probably loves like story just as much as I do. And as I was feeling into where to kind of begin, I feel like this will kind of give a little bit of an opportunity to kind of share your backstory, but I'd love to just kind of hear about the moment that you even realized for yourself that there was something that maybe you were holding on to, whether it was like a story or a belief or whatever that was, and that was kind of like keeping you playing small. And what was it that kind of allowed you to have this courage to let go as we dive into this conversation?
I love this. It's interesting. As you said that a story or a belief, I thought of two things, specifically a story. So, which I think also ties into the belief, but I would have this recurring dream of this opening scene. It was before I started writing and directing, and I was only acting at this time. And I was always being told, you're a writer, you're a writer. But I never believed that I was a writer. I could not embrace that fully for whatever reason, because as an actress, I was classically trained. I went to the best schools. I studied in London and Italy. And I was so immersed in the preparation of becoming an actor that I felt like as a writer, I couldn't say I was a writer until I proven myself as a writer. And this scene kept coming and coming and coming and as this recurring dream. And then finally during COVID, I said, I am going to write this. I don't know what it is, but it keeps coming to me. I don't know if it's going to be great or bad, interesting or not, but I'm going to actually just sit down and write it. And that very scene is now the opening scene of my television series that I'm going out with wide as we speak. And I think the message of that story is oftentimes things are trying to come through us and are trying to be birthed into the world. And we have all these limiting beliefs around, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. That's not for me. That's those people, not myself. And then when we just surrender to whatever it may be, we don't know how it's going to turn out. It could be incredible or not, but the process of surrendering to me is the most important part. And then you'll be surprised. And it always amazes me how things manifest and develop and turn into these beautiful, beautiful opportunities and projects and creative ventures, whatever you may call it, starting with this very simple notion of, let me just surrender to this and see where it takes me.
And I'm curious, I love that first and foremost, but I'm curious in terms of your process of surrendering, what does that look like for you? And I think the reason that I ask is because sometimes I think first and foremost, it's very difficult for us to surrender because we're just in this like day and age of just like wanting that control, and it's hard for us to surrender. And so I'm curious, what has that looked like for you? How would you describe surrendering, especially for creatives?
It's such a great question. I love that you use the word control because I am a recovering control addict. I used to be such a control freak, and I think it is the antithesis of being creative, right? Creative is about surrendering, it's about letting go, which to your point is very, very, very difficult to do because it's an unknown. And as human beings, I think we fear the unknown. And yet, I feel like the most incredible things that exist in life and the things that we want most are on the other side of that fear. And so, for me, and particularly as a creative, I've had to develop a practice of surrendering, a practice of letting go. And at first, it was much more difficult in the beginning. And for me, my struggle is vulnerability. So finding the vulnerability. And Brene Brown is one of my heroes because she really, really allowed me to understand the power of vulnerability and not think of it as a sort of weakness or a negative thing by being vulnerable. So for me, in terms of that process of letting go, I think it started with first an understanding of my resistance around it, and then a willingness to just try it. And it was difficult, and then try it some more. And then when I started seeing the results of surrendering, then I was inspired by the power and the magic of vulnerability.
That's so beautiful. And I know that you're not alone in that vulnerability piece. There's so many people that really, there's that fear around that vulnerability. And I'm curious, if you don't mind speaking to it, what was it for you, the vulnerability piece?
It's really interesting, and I agree. I think everyone has some fear around vulnerability, some much more than others, obviously. But for me, I think it was, especially when you're on stage or in front of the camera, there's a certain level of vulnerability that is met immediately with judgment is not the right word, but observation. So you're basically bearing your soul in front of an audience. And most people don't do that. Most people are vulnerable in the privacy of their relationship or their home, maybe in the workplace amongst a few people. But when you start being vulnerable in front of hundreds and thousands and millions of people, when you start moving to film and television, it adds a different level of sensibility. And for me, and the irony is, in order to really tap into the work and be your most connected creative being, you have to let that wall down. You have to let your guard down. And that was a very difficult process for me, like really getting to the point where I wasn't feigning it, where maybe I'm crying, maybe I'm super emotional in a scene, maybe I'm seemingly completely vulnerable in this moment, but there was always like a tad that was protecting me within myself. And so I started to notice that in order to really go to the next level, I had to really allow myself to go there.
Yeah. One thing that I was thinking about earlier too that you were just sharing is that piece around like the unknown, and how it's so scary for us. And I find that oftentimes when we kind of let go and we surrender and we allow ourselves to do the thing, whether it's simply just like start writing, we kind of look at it like, oh, it's not that bad. But I think sometimes, at least for creatives, it's like this idea around the first time I write these words, whether it be on a document or on paper, it has to be perfect. And that, I feel like, is something that I experience with a lot of like the authors that I work with. And even for myself in the process of writing my next book, there's been so much fun and joy in the inspiration and of the planning and of the organizing of all the ideas, regardless of me having done this before and written a book and supporting so many people. Like that weird strange fear of like, now I have to put this on paper, you know what I mean? And I feel like there's this piece around just like we want things to be so perfect the first time that we put it there. And yet I think for me at least is just opening up and embracing the door of what we can use as like co-collaboration, right? And like that's why we have editors, and that's why we have teams of people because we don't have to create something by ourselves. And I'm curious like how you see that in your industry of like film, and I guess what that has looked like in developing something.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that we're both writers. You get it. And it's so true. And I always say, don't let perfection be the death of progress. And I
Yeah.
agree, particularly for writing. I think, especially with writing, like this whole writer's block, I think people feel like it has to be perfect before they let anyone see it. And that is actually not how it works. As you know, it's a collaborative process. And in order for it to improve, people have to read it and give you feedback and give you notes and open further exploration and ideas around this story that is developing and takes time. And I'm the type of writer, I know not all writers are that, but I love feedback. I love hearing what others are actually receiving from what I'm writing, because especially as a writer, you can be such in a vacuum that in order to really fully realize an idea, I do think that it takes this notion of not of letting go of the perfectionism for sure, putting it out there, allowing others, whether it's an editor or friend or fellow writers, to read it and get back to you. But then to your point about collaboration, then it's this beautiful dance of I'm telling this story and then you read it, Ashley Ann, and then so and so reads it, and then it comes back and it opens all these ideas that would not have existed had I not allowed you to read it, you know?
Yep. I don't know about you. I'm curious. Do you think that writer's block is actually a thing? For me personally, I've always kind of said, like, I'm not sure that writer's block is what we think it is. I think it's actually just more so a lot of fear. But I'm curious, like, what do you think about it?
It's definitely fear. It's procrastination, which I think
Yeah.
is behind the procrastination is fear.
Hmm.
And I think as human beings, it's interesting. How do I say this? I don't think that we fear failure as much as we fear our higher selves. Like, I feel we fear how great we can actually be in the world. And once you start putting things out there and allowing others to actually see your greatness, I feel like people are afraid of that. Like, they're afraid of their own power in a way. And I think writer's block is that, like, what if it fails? Yes. But what if it's absolutely incredible and my whole life changes and now everyone is looking at me and now I have all this attention on me and then I have to do it again and again and then I have to repeat that success. I think that's the thing that really gets people in that block, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it also in ways I think both ends of the spectrum keep us playing small. Both ends of it.
Yep.
It's I don't want to say lose lose situation, but both narratives are going to keep you from in this space of just playing small, whether like you're not going after the thing or you don't even try, or even if you do it and you're like, great, that was great, and I'm okay that I don't even have to do it again. It's like
Exactly.
we get to make these choices for ourselves. But yeah, I think both situations and both narratives keep us in this place of staying stuck. And I'm curious, like, what has that played for you, or what have you seen in terms of just like being able to kind of allow ourselves to step out of these like narratives that are keep us from playing small and really allow ourselves to not be afraid to like rise to our fullest potential, to step in and see our full power. What has that been for you?
Yes. I am a huge advocate for the transformative power of creativity. And I work with corporations both on the leadership side and on the employee side around this notion of how do you harness the power of creativity to transform your world? So both in your career, but also in your life and also in your soul and your purpose and your intentions, like every aspect of life. I feel like we need to sort of break free of the things that are trying to keep us stuck. But in order to break free of those things, I think you have to kind of tap into what I call like this creative genius that allows you to reimagine your life. So if you're sort of on this hamster wheel, nothing's changing, nothing's growing, nothing's evolving, but you're kind of doing the same thing, expecting different results. creative thinking and creative expansion, I think, pulls us out of that hamster wheel and can put us on a totally new trajectory that we normally wouldn't have even fathomed was possible or even could exist. And there's a number of ways and exercises and things that people can do to kind of bring them out of that. But I do think that creativity is one of the most powerful tools that one can harness in order to do that.
I'm so full force. I've been really diving into like you're saying it one way, but I've been really diving into like creative alchemy and like so from more so just this like spiritual lens and just I think it coincides with the aspect of writing so deeply because it's through and I witnessed this even for myself. It's through writing that I get to all of it gets to transform. All of it starts to transform, whether it be like how I perceive myself or how I perceive a certain situation. We start to, or we get to see all these different angles and we do get to experience so much growth. And for me, my kind of like avenue of creativity is writing, but also like speaking and storytelling. But it's finding, I think, too, like our avenue of creativity that unlocks this inside of us. And once we find it and we harness it and we like just keep it as this beautiful, sacred practice for ourselves, like we continue to really like see all these different angles and of who we are and we start to really see our own power in it. I think it's like sometimes we get lost in what is everyone else doing? Like if my way is a little different from everybody else, am I doing it wrong? And it's like, oh my gosh, this is missing the point here.
It's so true. I love that. I'm also a very spiritual being and do find a lot of creativity has huge ties to sort of the spiritual way of moving through the world, which is why I think you and I really connect so deeply. And that I think applies to everything. I see it in nature. I think nature is so creative and so spiritual and so deeply rooted in this thing outside of ourselves, this higher power, if you will, that is limitless and has so many possibilities that we can tap into if we allow ourselves to go there. And to your point about sort of trying to do what everyone else is doing, I think that is such a disservice for humanity right now because we look at social media and it's like, oh, I want to look like that, or I want to do that, or I want to be that, or they found success in that. And it's actually, to your point, the opposite. We each individually are so uniquely beautiful and so uniquely talented, and finding our own version of this creative force, right? Doesn't mean you have to be a writer, doesn't mean you have to be a traditional creative because we all have it inside of us, but finding the thing that is trying to come out of us, trying to be birthed through us is the thing that I think brings incredible success and fulfillment in a very lasting way.
And you were saying these words at the beginning too, and they just like I think it comes back to I talk a lot about just like this nudge when we're feeling this nudge of whatever that is, right? If it's writing a book or whatever that nudge is for us as creatives, just like that feeling of not following it is just like what I think about, and I've experienced a lot of loss in my life. And so that was a very big early teacher for me at a very young age. And so that's been kind of a very big driving force for me in the sense that I wrote my book at a very young age. It was just kind of like I felt this nudge and I'm just going to run with it and we're just going to go and we're not even going to get into the thinking of it. We're not going to go there. We're just going to like lead with heart, lead with our creative life force energy, and we're going to lead with that. But I think sometimes it's like we feel it, we feel that like it, whether it's on our heart, in our soul, in our gut, whatever that is, and then we bring it up to our heads, and that's where like we start to like talk ourselves out of doing the thing. And so when you just talk about this nudge is how I kind of look at it. It's just like we have this one life, and I just think about it, and I know this sounds so cliche, but it's just why not? Why not try? Like, truly, what is the absolute worst thing that can happen? What's the
It's
worst thing?
so true. Look, I have to say this because it's on my heart, but there are certain people who are in certain environments where, whether it's a war zone or, what have you, where they're so, their hands are tied, right? Those of us
Yeah.
that are in an environment where we're safe, we're sound, and we can really tap into the thing that is trying to be born through us. And I feel like, and we owe that to humanity, that yes, just just try. And yes, we may fail, and that's okay. I feel like some of the greatest blessings in my life were some of the deepest heartbreaks of my life. And
Mm,
the struggle of going through things that really molded me and shaped me and grew me and mature me and created so much wisdom in me that I wouldn't take any of it away. So, yes, there are things that I've tried that did not work out as I expected. But now, in retrospect, I look at those things and I go, oh my gosh, it was all so divinely orchestrated. Because had I not done that, I wouldn't have done that, which wouldn't have led to that, which wouldn't have led to that, which wouldn't have got me here where I'm supposed to be. So it's
right.
like all of it is magical, the ups
It
and the
is.
downs, you know?
I find that the take that I like, I think even just naturally I have it in me where I go through a lot of trial and error, but like I can bounce back from the trial and error. I don't find that I stew so much in the failure of things. And I just have that resilience in me. But I think for me, the shift and what I look at it from, especially from the lens of just like, for example, like building a business and you're creating this like new way for yourself or just creating something literally from your soul, is just looking at it as an experiment, and that allows me to bring the play into all of it and the fun into it and not lose that fun. Because I think, like, I noticed when it stopped getting fun is when I stopped just playing with it. And I started taking it from, it wasn't coming from a place of soul or heart anymore. And it was just coming from other motives and other lens of just like, it should be this way or other people are, you know what I mean? When we start to look
Yes,
outside of ourselves, that's where we give up. I've said this so much lately, is that when we're constantly looking outside of ourselves, that's when we're giving up our power, because we're looking
100%.
for the answers outside of ourselves, to what you were talking about. Like, we're wanting to like be like someone else. We're trying to look like other people. And it's just like, we're
Yeah,
losing the magic in that. The magic is not in us all being copies of each other. The
it's
beautiful
so
thing is the
true.
uniqueness that we bring, each and every single one of us. And yet, in ways, it's like we're kind of like, oh, I think we're afraid to be that unique
Mm,
aspect of who we are. Like,
mm,
we forget that. And so I often always refer to it as like who you were as a child, and just bringing that essence, because that is the purity of who you are. You as a
absolutely.
child, that's the pure essence, with no stories or narratives or
Yep, yep,
beliefs around, if I'm this like quirky little funny human being, like no one's going to judge me. Like, we don't have any of that. That's the purity of who we are as children. If we can bring more of that playfulness, I think like we also just get to experience a more like rich and fulfilling life, and just fulfillment even in our days too.
absolutely. I could not agree more. And it's so true. Everything we need, desire, and want is already within us. It already lives inside of us. It's not outside of us, actually. And tapping back into that playful, childlike behavior, I think, is such a beautiful point, because children aren't walking around saying I'm not enough, trying to
Yeah.
prove themselves, right? It's when you get like sort of, when life happens and hardens us, and as we become adults, we lose touch of that innocent, vibrant, joyful, I'm just going to put on a play or sing a song or put this silly thing on my head and run around and make people laugh or make people, feel something in life. And I agree. It's like, if we could tap back into that as adults, that is like the most powerful thing that we could do. It really is.
Yeah, I agree. One question that I was like sitting with too, and I'm curious like your take on it. I feel like alignment is talked about a lot in this day and age. And I'm curious, from your perspective, from your journey, how you've been able to differentiate between something that is meant to really challenge us for our own personal growth, or something that is just simply like no longer in alignment for us?
That's a really great question. I do believe in a reason, a season, and a lifetime, in the sense that people, places, opportunities, situations, I think all come into our life for a reason, some for a season, some for a lifetime. And I think the ones that we're truly aligned with will stand the test of time.
Mm.
But it's also okay to outgrow things, to outgrow people, to outgrow situations, to outgrow jobs, to outgrow, you name it, inter-X, right? So I do think that staying in touch with yourself and really staying connected to your inner self and your inner desires and your inner world and inner soul will guide us around, is this truly aligned? Or did this situation come into my life for a reason or a season? And did I gain what I'm supposed to gain out of it? And now it's time to pivot and shift and evolve and expand in a different direction. And all of them are equally important. There's no weight assigned to any of them because they all are developing our journeys, our souls, our creativity, our intention, our purpose, etc.
I love that so much. I don't think I've ever heard anyone explain that as beautifully put as you've explained it. And I think about just us as humans and just how we're meant to evolve. We're in this life to evolve, and that is the part of it. As much as I think sometimes we try to cling to like something being the same, and again, that comes back to the control piece that we were talking about
Yes.
earlier. It's just
Yeah.
we're trying to control because maybe it just like it was so beautiful at one point. It's like it wants to continue to grow. It wants to continue to evolve and become even more beautiful. And sometimes we are trying to just keep it
Yep.
again small and in this
Yep.
little container
Yep.
because we're so afraid that, oh my gosh, well, what if then it's gone?
Yep. And
And
even
that's
more, to add more complication, not to cut you off, but even further, sometimes things are meant to come, go, and come back. So
oof.
sometimes, just another layer of complexity to this is sometimes something comes into your life to teach you something. And then you have to,
Mm,
sometimes the lesson is letting it go. And as you let it go, maybe you evolve or you grow or it evolves or it grows or you both evolve or both grow. And not necessarily a person or a thing. It could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be a situation, it could be anything. And then it finds its way back to you. And that's when you really know if something is meant to be a lifetime, is if it goes and then it comes back. And it comes back when you're maybe more ready, more equipped, more mature, etc.
yeah. Such an I think I respond because I'm just like viscerally, I'm like, yeah, big time. I'm like experiencing that in my own life. And I think too, it's like not being afraid of the seasons that even just us as creatives go through. It's not even that we have to, it's that we are going to go through. There's going to be seasons where you are kind of like full force in the tunnel vision and your blinders are up and you're just like you're
Thank you for
living
listening. Make
on
sure
purpose,
to
with
leave a
purpose,
review
in
and
doing your
continue
purpose,
the conversation with
all
me
of
over
that.
on
And
social
then
media.
there's going to be
And I'll see you in the
seasons
next
of
episode.
introspection and reflection. And I think that's where, as creatives, it's being able to really lean into all of this because we can't it's like we can't have one without the other. There's always going to be this duality, right? We can't have life without death. We can't have
Yep.
death without life.
Yeah.
There's always going to be this duality that is part of it. And so I think even as creatives, I think a big, I don't want to say, I guess maybe lesson, but just the thing that we're here to learn as creatives too is comes back to this piece around surrender. Because if you cannot fight that, there becomes a lot more ease. And I think I speak from my own just personal, very recent experience of just going full force for a few years and then just being called to go inwards and have this introspection. And now, again, just being able to like come back out and be in a new rebirth in a new place. And it's beautiful. It truly is. It's not easy when you're in the introspection, though. Not always.
Yes. Yes.
It's not always an
Yes.
easy phase
No.
for us to be in, but
Yes.
they're all so necessary. They're
And
all
so
so
beautiful.
necessary. Yeah, like if you can lean into that.
If you can, and it is difficult, and we're not, let's not minimize the challenges around this, but for sure it's the most beautiful. And as you spoke about that so beautifully, I think about nature, right? And the ocean, how it ebbs and flows, and how flowers, they go dormant in the winter, right? And they look seemingly dead, but they're not. They're still alive. They're just waiting for spring. And then spring comes around and everything comes out again. And I feel like that's the natural cycle of life, to your point. There are coming outs, there are going ins, there are expansion, there are contraction. And wouldn't life be so boring if it was all just one thing? We need all of it.
Of
Yeah.
course. And I feel like it's part of in that period of introspection, or winter as we call it, is where we, I feel like, really learn to trust ourselves and trust the process, and trust, because it's in that space, right? Like we have to be able to have the space where it's even, I mean, we talk about nature and we talk about season, and there's so many ways to look at it, but you can even look at it from the lens of like the moon, and the moon has
Hmm.
all the different phases that we go through in the month, right? So it's like there's
Yep.
always a time around the full moon, inward, introspection, reflection. Like we always kind of have to have this dance of just like constant looking inward. And that's not just like in the season of winter, it's just constantly, so that we can just make sure that we are staying in alignment, staying focused, and really like, and that's where I think when we start to have more of these periods and we're not afraid to ask ourselves these hard questions, is this still aligned for me? Am I still experiencing a lot of joy in doing this, whatever that looks like? That's where we really deepen our trust, because then we can start to bring in this, okay, this no longer serves me, or this is no longer what I want to do. I'm going to let that go. And like we build this beautiful like relationship with ourselves in this inward reflection phase that we go through.
It's so true. I have to say this. It's funny because the feature film, or there's a short and a feature actually that I'm writing and directing, is exactly about this. It's about a woman who is going inward and finding herself.
Mm,
It's about self love, self reflection, self worth, self discovery. And I agree. I feel like, and particularly even in media, we don't talk about this. It's not commonly practiced for particularly a woman, men too, let's be real, like both, to really go inward and figure out, is this serving me? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? As is this aligned? And I think when you really start asking yourself all those questions, your life transforms in the most beautiful way, truly.
yeah. You know what I thought about too? It's even like we talk about burnout, and we see that a lot too. And in just simplicity terms, like why do we experience burnout? We're constantly giving, 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 and then we're giving from an empty cup, empty cup. But I think for those that of us that have found this dance and have built this balance or harmony with being able to give and then have that time to go inwards and nourish ourselves, for us as women, it's just, I think I'm blown away at just how we everything comes back to being cyclical, whether it be the seasons, the phases of the moon, us as women who experience our cycles, even just that period of time when you are in your cycle and you are on your bleed. It's like that's the time to go inward, that's the time to nourish yourself. But when we're constantly just giving, we have nothing left. We have
It's
nothing
so
left
true.
for us. And that's
Yep.
where we start to experience the burnout. We are stressed, we're unhappy, we're not living from this good place. And I think the more that we can have these conversations, and I think as well, the more that we could bring this even into, I think, school systems. I think just being taught this at a younger age, we can at least begin to learn the skills at a younger age and have a lot more time to practice and get better at it, versus, you
100%.
learn it like in your 30s and you're kind of like,
Right.
okay, now I have to kind of unwire, like
Yes.
undo all the other stuff that I've been
Unlearn.
taught. Yeah.
Yes. And you're lucky if you learn it in your 30s, right?
Yes.
If you're lucky. But it's true. I
Yes.
feel like this is curriculum that should be taught in schools. Life skills. Like we are not actually taught how to navigate life at all. In any stage of the education process. And unfortunately, most people have to learn this through trial and error, and which is not necessarily always a bad thing, but how beautiful would it be if we taught our children the nature of introspection and ebbs and flows and ups and downs of life, and just how to navigate those things and understand that it's normal, it's natural, and everyone experiences that. You're not alone, you're not abnormal to be having a bad day or to need to go in and take care of yourself inwardly. So
Mm.
yeah,
And
it's true.
not to fear that unknown too. Not to fear that part of the entire journey of the process, not to fear it and to trust it and to really trust ourselves too in the process of all of it as well. I'd love to just kind of hear from like your perspective of the media, and it's like what kind of stories? I know you were already kind of sharing one, but like what kind of stories do you feel like we need more in the media in today's like society and world?
I love this question. Yeah, the types of stories that I write are the types of stories that I feel we need more of. And I say that because they're they're driven around the social issues of our time, particularly. So the television series that I'm working on is about equity and access and resilience and having to overcome adversity, right? Which all of us at some point in our lives are faced with massive challenges. And then our humanity and our moral compass and all these things come into play. And that story sort of really addresses that. And then the film that I'm working on is, like I said, this notion of self love and self worth and self discovery and really going within. And in the end, it's not about finding it outside of yourself in a man or in a job or in a car or in any material object. It's about finding it within you. And that's the only true fulfillment, is when we find it within ourselves. And I think we need to your point, like I consider myself a storyteller as well. And we need to tell stories that are going to inspire and impact, and also that are going to provoke thought and affect change and create narratives that will really help people at the end of the day. Just help them reflect on their own lives. It's really not that complicated. So that when they leave the theater or they leave the television screen, they actually are asking themselves questions around, huh, that's interesting. Am I doing that? Am I not doing that? Should I be doing this or should I be doing that? And I think that's what grows us as human beings, as we start to ask ourselves and ask each other questions that we often don't ask ourselves and don't ask each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think we underestimate the power of like a question or just something like getting us to think a different way, I think is such a powerful thing. And to have more people just like you that are in media, because it's such a big part of our world, to bring this intention behind the things that we're creating but that are being consumed, because there's so much that we can learn even from, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but I mean, I guess I have a little guilty pleasure for like reality TV as well. And,
Yeah,
but,
same.
you know, I will say the show that I'm thinking of right now is Too Hot to Handle. Don't judge me. Anyone listen, don't judge me. But here's the thing. I have cried so much from watching that show because of when they have brought in these really beautiful experts into this show, and to see and witness the transformation that from the workshops that they do were just such a profound thing. And this is what I mean about this. I guess that's why I thought about it. It's just like, yeah, we think one way about reality TV, and then it's like you have this and you have this like very intentional, like beautiful conversations that can be brought into television. And yeah, I don't know why I thought about that, but yeah,
No, and
just
listen, I watch reality. I'm not even going to act like I'm holier than thou. And I actually watch it because I find it fascinating. This experiment around humanity. I actually look at
yeah.
reality, and I know some of it is scripted and blah blah blah. I get all of that. But like Love is Blind, for example, I think
Yes, I'm obsessed.
it shows this sort of really interesting human dynamic that I think you can't capture in scripted television, which I'm obsessed with, obviously, scripted as well. But there is something to glean and to discover in all of it, right? It's
Yeah.
all showing us, teaching us, revealing things within us, around us. So I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much that we can take from it. And I'm curious, I'm just going to ask too, the two things that you're working on, do they have dates? Is it still early on in the process to even have dates? I'm speaking for myself.
Well, thank you for asking. And so we're right now, we're in the one of them. So the television series is kind of moving into the development stage where I've been working on it for actually several years, developing the story. And it started as a film and then transformed into a television series because there was so much story to actually tell. And so that one, I would say, maybe in the next year or so. These things take many, many, many years to find their way to the screen, which most people don't know. I know you know. And the film, we're probably going to shoot the short version of it this year and then shoot the feature version of it next year. So then in the next year or so, those will start to release as well. And you can follow me, and if anyone's interested, on obviously on my social platforms, Instagram, etc. And as these things develop, I'll be sharing them with the community. But yeah, it's just been a very exciting journey, and I'm really, to your point, I'm loving the process so much that every stage of it is just, I'm savoring.
I feel like that's a whole added like layer of just for us as creatives, no matter what avenue that looks like, whether you're in film, whether you are writing books, whether you like entrepreneurs, you're creatives.
Hmm.
Being able to savor like every part of it, I think that is also such a big just piece that I think we forget, and we're so kind of focused on just like the end, and yet there's so much magic happening. And I say this also just from like the difference of me writing my first book compared to this second book is exactly that. My first book was like this end in sight of just like just get this book out and like I'm going to have a book in my hands. It was just so focused on that. And yet there is so much happening in this second book journey that is so like juicy, is like the only way that I can
Yeah.
describe it. It's just, yeah, like savoring every single minute of it, of just like, wow, being inspired by conversations that I get to have, especially through this platform that I've created of this podcast. It's fueling so much, and it's helping me create, there's just so many ideas that come through from these conversations, and it's just savoring every single bit of it and not feeling like I have to rush that process either. Just yeah, I feel like again it's always coming back to finding this like dance between the two, not procrastinating, not holding back, but also savoring at the same time.
Absolutely. And it's so true. Life is not a destination, it's a journey. And if you focus on the destination, you'll get there and realize you missed all the best parts along the way.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.